Hi, welcome back to Jay's Retro Toys and Games for Wednesday, May 18, 2022. It's episode 19, and on this episode here, we're going to be looking at a game that I thought was actually the United States and came out in 83. Boy, was I wrong about that. It actually came out in Canada around 1981, but then wasn't released until 1983. So for 2 years, we had to wait for this game, and it's a Canadian board game in which winning is determined by a player's ability to answer general knowledge and popular culture questions. They move their pieces around the board, the squares they land on determining the subject of a question they are asked from a card from 6 categories, including history and science and nature. And each correct answer allows the player's turn to continue. A correct answer on one of the 6 category headquarters spaces earns a plastic wedge which is slotted into the answerer's playing piece, otherwise known as a piece of the pie. That's right. And since the game's first release in 1981, numerous themed editions have been released. Some question sets have been designed for younger players, and others for a specific time period or a promotional tie-in, such as Star Wars, Saturday Night Live, and the Lord of the Rings movies. What game are we talking about? Oh yeah, it's Trivial Pursuit, tonight on Jay's Retro Toys and Games. Okay, let's get into this and be welcoming to another edition of Retro Toys and Games. I'm your host, Jason DeCanio. Hope you're having a good hump day during the middle of the week as we start off our historic look at Trivial Pursuit. The game was actually created on December 15, 1979 in Montreal, Quebec by Chris Haney, who was a photo editor for Montreal's The Gazette, and Scott Abbott, a sports editor for the Canadian Press. After finding pieces of their Scrabble game missing, they decided to create their own game, and with the help of John Haney and Ed Werner, they completed development of the game, which was released in 1981. The rights to the game were initially licensed to Selchow and Reiter in 1982, then to Parker Brothers, now part of Hasbro, in 1988, after initially being turned down by the Virgin Group. And then in 2008, Hasbro bought the full rights for $80 million. And as of 2014, more than 100 million games had been sold in 26 countries and 17 languages. Northern Plastics of Elroy, Wisconsin produced 30 million games between 1983 and 1985. In December of 93, Trivial Pursuit was named to the Games Hall of Fame by Games Magazine. An online version of Trivial Pursuit was launched in September of 2003. The object of the game is to move around the board by correctly answering trivia questions. Questions are split into 6 categories, with each one having its own color to readily identify itself. In the classic version of Trivial Pursuit, the geography category is blue, entertainment is pink, history yellow, arts and literature is originally brown, later purple, science and nature is green, and sports and leisure, orange. The game includes a board, playing pieces, question cards, a box, small plastic wedges to fit into the playing pieces, and a die. Playing pieces used in Trivial Pursuit are round and divided into 6 sections like wedges of a pie. A small plastic wedge, sometimes called cheese, like cheese triangles, can be placed into each of these sections to mark each player's progress. And during the game, players move their playing pieces around a board, which is shaped like a wheel, with 6 spokes, rolling a single die to determine how far to move. The board is divided into spaces of different colors, and the center space is a hexagonal hub. Now, at the end of each spoke is a category headquarters space, and after landing on a space, the player is asked a question in the category corresponding to its color. A correct answer allows the player to continue their turn, while a miss passes control to the next player in sequence. Questions must be answered without any outside assistance. landing on a category headquarters space and answering correctly awards a wedge in that color. If the player does not yet have one, wedges are fitted into the playing pieces as they are earned. The player may move in any available direction and change directions at any category headquarters, space, or the hub, but may not backtrack. Roll again spaces allow the player an extra die roll without having to answer a question, while landing on the hub allows the player to answer a question in that category of their choice as long as they do not yet have all 6 wedges. Any number of playing pieces may occupy a given space at the same time. A variant rule ends a player's turn on collecting a wedge, preventing a single knowledgeable player from running the board. After collecting all 6 wedges and filling their playing piece, the player must land on the hub by exact count and correctly answer a question in a category chosen by their opponents in order to win the game. If the player misses the question, they must leave the hub on their next turn and return to it for another chance to win. Now, over the years, numerous editions of Trivia Pursuit have been produced, usually specializing in various fields. The original version is known as the Genesis Edition, or Genesis 1. Several different general knowledge editions, such as Genesis 2, have followed. Other editions include the Junior Edition, 1985, All-Star Sports, Baby Boomers, 1980s, all about the 80s, 90s, and others. In total, over 100 different editions in different languages have been printed. In the United Kingdom, Trivial Pursuit players complained that the 2006 version of the game was dumbed down in comparison to previous editions, with easier questions and more focus on celebrities and show business. The Toy Insider mentioned that it can be enjoyed by baby boomers, millennials, and everyone in between, while Board Games Land called it the timeless classic and the godfather of trivia games. Here's the Fred Worth lawsuit. In October of 1984, Fred L. Worth, author of the Trivia Encyclopedia, Super Trivia, and Super Trivia 2, filed a $300 million lawsuit against the distributors of Trivial Pursuit. He claimed that more than a quarter of the questions in the game's Genesis Edition had been taken from his books, even to the point of reproducing typographical errors and deliberately placed misinformation. One of the questions in Trivial Pursuit was, what was Columbo's first name? With the answer, Philip. Well, that information had been fabricated to catch anyone who might try to violate his copyright. The inventors of Trivial Pursuit acknowledged that Worth's books were among their sources, but argued that this was not improper and that facts are not protected by copyright. The district court judge agreed, ruling in favor of the Trivial Pursuit inventors. The decision was appealed, and in September of 1987, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit Court upheld the ruling. Worth asked the Supreme Court of the United States to review the case, but the court declined, denying certiorari in March of 1988. I want to know what that word means. In law, certiorari is a court process to seek judicial review. Okay, good. You could click on that word, certiorari. What a name. Well, in 1994, David Wall of Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, launched a lawsuit against the game's creators. He claimed that in the fall of 1975, he and a friend were hitchhiking near Sydney, Nova Scotia, when they were picked up by Chris Haney. Wall claimed that he told Haney about his idea for the game in detail, including the shape of the markers. Wall's mother testified she found drawings of his that looked like plans for a Trivial Pursuit-like game, but the drawings had since been destroyed, and Wall's friend, who was allegedly hitchhiking with him that day, never testified. Haney said he never met Wall. And over the years, there was much legal wrangling, notably around whether the suit should be decided by a judge or a jury. And on June 25, 2007, the Nova Scotia Supreme Court ruled against Wall. Well, a version of Trivial Pursuit hosted by Wink Martindale aired on the Family Channel in the United States from 1993 to 1995. Jay Wolpert had attempted a pilot in 1987, but it was not picked up. And a syndicated version entitled Trivia Pursuit America Plays aired from 2008 to 2009 and hosted by Christopher Knight. In September of 2004, Roger Lodge hosted a sports trivia game show on ESPN entitled ESPN Trivial Pursuit, which aired 5 episodes. Former Jeopardy guest host LeVar Burton is tapped to host a version of Trivial Pursuit. BBC Television produced a Trivial Pursuit game show based on the game in the UK, hosted by Rory McGrath. Another British version with rules format similar to the Wink Martindale version, and also using the same theme tune as the Wink Martindale version, was hosted on the Family Channel, now challenged by Tony Slattery. Birgit Lettmann hosted a version for Vox in Germany from 1993 to 1994. In 1988, a made-for-television movie entitled Breaking All the Rules, the creation of Trivia Pursuit, aired. Treated largely as a comedy, the movie featured the music of Jimmy Buffett and portrayed the creators of the game as 3 beer-loving Canadians. In Spain, a version of the show called Trivia Pursuit, Spain Plays, premiered in September of 2008 on Antenna 3. The Soviet Union in 1989 bought the rights to produce its own version of the board game and also started an official championship for family teams, finals of which were broadcast on Soviet Central Television as the game show Lucky Case. After the agreement ended in 1991, the show changed their rules, dropping Trivial Pursuit elements, and continued broadcasting until 2000. In 1984, Balicente released the Trivial Pursuit arcade game, and like the board game, several variants were also subsequently released. You have the home computer games, the Hasbro Interactive. They released the Millennium Edition in 1999. In 1999, Sony Online Entertainment licensed Trivial Pursuit from Hasbro Interactive. You also have the video game, was released for a number of home video systems, including Sega CD, the Wii, Windows Phone, Xbox 360, Xbox One, PlayStation 2, and 3. The board game was also adapted into a mobile game called Trivia Crack, as well as Trivial Pursuit Genesis Edition for the Nokia 3650, 6600, Engage, and Siemens SX1. And it goes on to say that they had more consoles as well, from Xbox 360, PlayStation, and a whole host of others. Also, there was one that came out 4 years ago on the Nintendo Switch. And then released for this year, Snap Finger Click, was released in 2022 for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Stadia. Wow. And there you have it, folks. Trivial Pursuit, the game that the Canadians were playing 2 years before we even saw it. And then, once it hit the United States, bang, zoom, there we are. Well, episode 19 has come to the end, and we are proud of our games here and, of course, our toys. And speaking of our toys, next up we're going to be looking at a toy line, boy, that you wouldn't believe it. It took off so fast because the cartoon is responsible for its toy line. We're going to be looking at, in several different parts, first, the Masters of the Universe. We'll be looking at, of course, He-Man, but we'll be looking mainly at the early parts of it, the early animation action figures and comics, the origin of the franchise, the history and the versions. You know it all goes all the way down to the 2000s and so forth. It's going to be a big series. So we'll have the Masters of the Universe on Friday, Princess of Power, which is She-Ra's denomination, on Monday. Then we go into our games, and after that, I'll give you a little rundown of where we're going with some of the episodes here. So when the two toys come in, we'll have Masters of the Universe on Monday, or this Friday coming up. Princess of Power will be on Monday, and then for our games again, we'll be looking at Toss Across, and of course, then we get into another great game called Trivia Adventure, which is the sister. It's like the junior edition. Let me put it this way. Whoops. Trivia Adventure is more of the Planet game, and I had that. Whoops. I can't even type today. What's going on? Whoops. Trivia Adventure. It's called Trivia Crack. They don't even have Trivia Adventure. You believe this? Oh, yes. It's by the Pressman Toy Company. And let me see if they have the Trivia Adventure. They do, but it was not a big thing there. So let's see. The Pressman games that we looked at so far were Othello, and we looked at... we haven't looked at anything yet. Let's see. Boy, this is going to be interesting. Jeopardy's there. Oh, here's a great game that really has a lot of history to it. Rummy Cube. Yes. So we'll be looking at Toss Across and Rummy Cube next time on the tour on the games, and then go back and look at He-Man and She-Ra individually. Should be very interesting. I'm Jason DeCanio. Hope you had a great night with this particular episode. We will see you next time for the 20th episode. Wow, we'll be looking at the 20th episode with the Masters of the Universe. Have a great night. We'll see you on Friday. Bye for now.
Don't forget to subscribe to the David3000 Network for great more content like this one.